I want you to picture your daily routine for a second. The alarm goes off, you grab your coffee, you commute, you tackle the inbox.
The standard grind.
Right. You are putting in the hours for that promotion, or maybe, you're working hard to provide stability for your family.
Yeah, or even dedicating your weekends to volunteering, pushing for some kind of meaningful social progress.
Exactly. You are putting in the miles.
Mm-hmm.
But what if, despite all of that sweat and dedication, you are running a marathon in the completely wrong direction? Like, what if the finish line you were sprinting toward is actually a dead end?
It is a profoundly unsettling proposition to consider. I mean, we map out our entire lives based on these very tangible, very physical milestones, right?
Yeah, a better job, a secure home, a fair society.
Exactly. So to question the map itself, to suggest that the entire landscape we're navigating is, well, an illusion, it requires a massive, almost uncomfortable shift in perspective.
And that is the exact shift we are exploring in today's deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at a deeply philosophical and spiritual essay written in April 2006.
Right, by an author named Schwifing.
Yeah. It is titled simply The Ultimate Goal of Life. And our mission today is to thoroughly examine this text's central and honestly pretty radical claim.
It really is.
The essay argues that the entirety of human suffering, like all the anxiety, the fatigue, the historical tragedies, stems from our absolute obsession with material reality.
Yeah.
And it claims that achieving true wisdom requires us to abandon the physical world almost entirely.
The text pulls zero punches. It asks you to look at the foundations of modern society, our reliance on science, on logic, on material progress, and consider that we have been completely blinded by our own intelligence.
Wow.
It demands that we rethink everything we consider quote-unquote real.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand the cure Schwifing is proposing, we first have to understand his diagnosis of the disease.
Right.
We need to look at exactly why he believes humanity has gone so drastically astray. So we start with his observation of everyday life.
Yeah, he begins by looking at the average person's daily grind. He notes that if you walk up to someone and ask them, what are you busy doing all day long? The answers are incredibly predictable.
Like what?
Well, people will tell you they're chasing money, fame, status, or just material enjoyment.
Sure, the usual suspects.
Right. Or, on a slightly less selfish note, they might say they're working tirelessly for their family or trying to bring glory to their ancestors.
Or fighting for their country and their people.
Exactly.
Those all sound like standard, acceptable, even noble answers in our society. I mean, if you tell someone you are working hard to put your kids through school, you get a pat on the back.
You do. But then Schwifing asks the crucial follow-up question, which is, what comes next? And the answer he inevitably finds is a tragic shrug. It's the sentiment of, well, it doesn't matter after I die.
Right.
He views this endless loop of material striving, followed by the absolute finality of physical death, as deeply pathetic. He actually summarizes this human condition with a very evocative quote from spiritual tradition.
Which is?
Boundless is the sea of bitterness. Repent and you will see the shore.
I have to jump in here and kind of pump the brakes.
Go for it.
I totally get why pursuing endless greed or superficial fame or just sensory stimulation is framed as a sea of bitterness. That is a classic spiritual critique we've all heard before.
Sure.
But why is working for your family, or dedicating your life to your country, or fighting for democracy considered a dead end here?
It's a tough pill to swallow.
I mean, we usually view those as the antidotes to selfishness.
Yeah.
It feels incredibly cynical to lump fighting for human rights into the same bucket as, like, Wall Street greed.
That is the core tension of his argument, and it requires us to look at the ultimate horizon of his philosophy. Schwifing's stance is that if you do not have a spiritual, non-material ultimate goal, then absolutely everything in the physical world eventually just becomes a tool for selfish ends. Let's look at the mechanics of this. If the material world is all there is, and death is the final period at the end of the sentence, then the highest underlying logic dictates you should acquire whatever resources you can while you are here.
Because it's finite.
Right. The material world is inherently finite and zero-sum.
So, if there is no higher spiritual accountability, morality just becomes a matter of resource management, like trying not to get caught breaking the rules.
That is his exact diagnosis. He argues that if our precious life direction is solely anchored in the material realm, we literally cannot avoid systemic disasters.
Wow.
Deception, theft, oppression, corruption, the destruction of nature, All of these become justifiable, logical strategies for survival and dominance in a purely physical universe.
Conscience just goes out the window.
Exactly. Conscience and principles lose their objective value if your only fear is earthly law.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
Yeah.
It applies to those big noble systems we build too.
It really does. To address your point earlier about democracy or constitutionalism, Xu argues that pursuing these concepts within a purely material framework is essentially meaningless.
Because it's still material.
Right. He says it is nothing more than rearranging the tables, chairs, and benches that were originally in the house.
Like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic.
Exactly. Or, as he puts it, just putting old wine into new bottles.
Because the underlying disease, that obsession with the material, is still driving the people inside that democracy.
Right.
If everyone is ultimately just fighting for a slice of a finite material pie before they die, you haven't changed the nature of the game. You've just changed the rules of how the spoils are divided.
That is a perfect way to synthesize it. I mean, you can hustle and bustle all you want, you can change the government, amass wealth, build a legacy, but when you grow old, if you only believe in the material, you are still staring at a brick wall.
Yeah.
So he asks the listener directly, why bother struggling so much just to hit a dead end?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if everything we touch, build, and vote for in the material world is just rearranging furniture on a sinking ship, where does Rifeng suggest we look instead?
And he doesn't just offer a vague, look inside yourself platitude here.
No, he doesn't. He actually points to the severe physical limitations of human biology and science to build this massive alternative cosmology.
He fundamentally challenges our reliance on our physical senses.
Yeah.
We love to say we are grounded in reality or down to earth, right? We trust what we can see and hear. But Xu brings in some undeniable, hard physical facts to completely shatter that confidence.
Like the fact that he points out that the naked human eye only sees about 3% of the universe.
Less 3%.
3%. Our entire visual reality is just a tiny sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. And our hearing is trapped in this tiny little biological box, too.
Oh, absolutely.
We can only process sound frequencies between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Anything above or below that, and to us, it's just pure silence.
Even though the sound waves are physically there.
Right. They're crashing into our eardrums, but our brains just don't register them.
And he uses those specific biological limitations to make a profound philosophical leap. If we are completely blind to 97% of the physical universe and deaf to countless frequencies vibrating all around us, why are we so stubbornly resistant to acknowledging the existence of higher-level, non-material life spaces?
We would just assume our biological limits are the limits of the universe.
Exactly. We operate on the assumption that our sensory experience is the totality of existence, which, from a purely statistical standpoint, is incredibly arrogant.
So, if we accept that premise, what does he say is actually out there in that unseen 97%?
He describes a reality that makes our daily physical experience look incredibly primitive. I mean, he argues that time is not just a straight line heading into the future.
Right.
He posits there is vertical time intersecting with horizontal time. And space isn't just the 3 dimensions we walk around in. He claims there are more than 30 dimensions structuring the universe.
More than 30 dimensions. I mean, trying to picture even a 4th dimension breaks the human brain, let alone 30.
And the mechanics get even wilder when he compares material physics to non-material physics.
How so?
Well, in our physical 3% world, the absolute speed limit is the speed of light. Nothing physical, nothing with mass goes faster. But Xu argues that non-material structures, which he defines as the very essence of life with a capital L, operate on completely inverse rules.
Inverse rules.
Right. They operate at what he calls a negative universe speed.
Wait, let's ground this. What does negative universe speed actually mean conceptually? Is it like a shadow moving faster than the object casting it?
Think about the relationship between mass and velocity. In physical science, as an object approaches the speed of light, its mass becomes infinite, right? So it requires infinite energy to keep moving.
Yeah, that's the barrier.
Xu suggests that non-material structures have absolutely zero physical mass. Because they aren't burdened by physical density, they aren't just unbothered by the speed of light, their foundational physics operate inversely. Okay.
So negative speed here implies an instantaneous traversal. A spiritual, non-material structure can cross several light years in an instant, precisely because it exists outside the friction of physical space-time.
It's like playing a massive, incredibly complex open-world video game, but you're only looking at the glowing pixels on your monitor.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You are completely oblivious to the millions of lines of invisible code that are actually running the simulation, rendering the physics, and loading the next map.
Right. Yeah.
You think those glowing pixels are the ultimate reality, but they are just the clumsy, delayed end result of a massive, hidden architecture.
The pixels are the material manifestation, while the code is the non-material essence.
Yeah.
Shufeng's point is that if you spend your whole life just trying to arrange the pixels on your screen, fighting over who gets the brightest pixel, you are completely missing the actual point of the game.
But that begs a massive practical question.
What's that? If this invisible reality of code and 30 dimensions and super light speed exists all around us, how do we access it? Because my monitor, my biological eyes and ears can only see the pixels. If our biology is that flawed, how do we grasp anything outside of it?
What's fascinating here is how aggressively Shufeng dismisses the tools we usually rely on to find the truth.
Oh.
He says that to understand the true nature of the universe, not only must you abandon your reliance on vision and hearing, but you also have to abandon your highest intellectual achievements.
Wait, really?
Yeah, he claims that human philosophy and logical reasoning will actually lead you entirely astray.
I am going to push back on that hard.
I figured you might.
If logic and reason are out the window, how do we even begin to make sense of anything?
Yeah.
If we can't measure it and we can't reason through it, aren't we just guessing? It sounds like an excuse to just believe whatever you want without evidence.
It sounds exactly like that until he introduces the concept of reverse thinking through the lens of topology.
Topology?
Yeah, he uses the Mobius strip to illustrate why our baseline logic fails us. If you take a strip of paper, give it a half twist, and take the ends together, you create a Mobius strip.
Okay, visualizing it.
Now look at it. To your physical eyes and to your basic geometric logic, it looks like a three-dimensional object with two distinct sides, an inside surface and an outside surface.
Right. If I hold it, I can pinch the top and the bottom. It clearly has two sides.
But mathematically, structurally, if you take a pen and trace a line continuously along the center of that strip, you will cover the entire surface, both the quote-unquote inside and the outside, and return to your starting point without ever lifting the pen.
Wow. Yeah.
Your visual logic tells you there are two sides. But the underlying structural reality proves there is only one continuous surface.
So the visual reality is essentially a magic trick masking the true essence of the object.
Shufeng refers to this as a fantastic transformation.
Yeah.
He argues the entire material world functions like that Mobius strip.
Our logic is fooled by the twist.
Yeah, exactly. Our physical senses and our earthly logic are calibrated to be fooled by the twist in the paper. So to perceive the truth, you have to use reverse thinking. You have to consciously invert your assumptions and look past the obvious manifestation to see the structural reality.
Okay, conceptually that makes sense. If reverse thinking is looking at the mathematical structure rather than the surface drawing, how do I actually do that in my daily life? Like, what are the practical tools if I can't use my physical logic?
He breaks this transition down by categorizing wisdom into 5 distinct progressive levels.
Okay.
The absolute baseline, the lowest tier, is what he calls human eyes wisdom. This encompasses any knowledge built on the foundation of the physical senses, what we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, and measure.
So all of science, basically.
Yeah. Modern science and traditional philosophy live entirely on this bottom floor.
If Einstein and Aristotle are on the bottom floor, what does the rest of the building look like?
Above human eyes, the sequence moves to Diva eyes wisdom, then wisdom eyes wisdom, then Dharma eyes wisdom, and finally, at the absolute peak, Buddha eyes wisdom.
That's a lot of levels.
It is, and the transition between these levels isn't about accumulating more data, it's about shifting the mechanism of perception.
How do you make that shift?
The higher you ascend in these levels, the less you rely on intellectual deduction, and the more you activate what he calls Lingju, or spiritual awareness.
Spiritual awareness.
Right. And think of spiritual awareness not as an emotion, but as an entirely separate sensory organ that has atrophied in modern humans.
Like a muscle we haven't used.
Exactly. To move from human eyes to Deva eyes, you have to start treating your intuition and your non-analytical consciousness as a primary data source, rather than a secondary feeling. He asserts that without intentionally cultivating this specific spiritual perception, it is literally impossible to even comprehend the higher forms of wisdom, let alone acquire them.
It's like we are trying to learn a completely new language by sniffing the pages of a book. The tool just doesn't match the task. We are stuck at the bottom level, looking at our 3% of the universe, using our flawed logic to study a Mobius strip we fundamentally don't understand.
That's a great summary.
And since we can't rely on our own brains to reach this higher wisdom organically, Shuifeng argues we desperately need external help, which leads to this incredible adapted analogy in the text about a monkey and a typewriter.
Oh, it is the classic infinite monkey theorem, but deployed to completely crush the idea of self-guided spiritual evolution.
Right.
Shuifeng says that if you put a monkey in front of a computer keyboard and give it 100 years, it won't just fail to type the complete works of Shakespeare, it mathematically won't even manage to randomly strike the keys to produce a single, coherent, grammatically correct sentence.
The lesson being that random stumbling in the dark, no matter how much time or how much earthly logic you apply, will never magically produce ultimate truth. We require a guide. We need someone who already knows the language to teach us how to read.
This raises an important question. Who can possibly guide humanity when humanity has become so incredibly self-important?
Yeah, we think we know everything.
Shuifeng delivers a blistering critique of modern intellectual arrogance. Look at what we've achieved using purely our humanized wisdom. We have sent rovers to explore the surface of Mars. We have manipulated the nano-world. We've cracked the codes of Newtonian mechanics, relativity, string theory, and quantum mechanics.
We feel unstoppable.
We really do.
I am going to play devil's advocate again here, representing the listener who loves science. You mentioned quantum mechanics and string theory. Isn't that humanity's deliberate attempt to use science to peek behind the curtain, to look past the pixels and map the invisible code? Why is that noble pursuit considered arrogant in this framework?
It's a vital distinction to make. The arrogance, according to Shuifeng's text, doesn't lie in the curiosity itself. The arrogance lies in the assumption that the rigid laws governing the physical world can be mapped onto the non-material world. He establishes a hard, unbreakable rule, which is that the material world has its own operating system, and the non-material world runs on entirely different fundamental laws.
So we are basically trying to use a thermometer to measure a poem, or a tape measure to evaluate a piece of music. We're using the wrong metric.
It's a massive category error. And that specific error leads to ridiculous, arrogant, logical conclusions in our daily lives.
Like what?
Well, if you use physical metrics to evaluate spiritual truth, you end up looking at a deeply realized spiritual guide and dismissing them because of earthly criteria. People will say, well, the supposed master doesn't know how to write computer code, he can't fly a commercial jet, he can't shoot lasers from his eyes, and he can't magically predict the stock market. Therefore, he obviously has no profound wisdom.
Wow. So we dismiss the guide because he doesn't know how to play our localized 3% pixel game.
Shuifeng warns that this dynamic creates a tragic paradox. As humanity becomes smarter and more technologically advanced in the material sphere, we actually become significantly more foolish regarding the ultimate truth.
Because our ego gets in the way.
Exactly. We have proudly declared that man can conquer nature, and we've driven the actual gods, Buddhas, and saints off their altars. Our technological success creates an ego that acts as an impenetrable shield against true spiritual guidance.
We are just the smartest cow in the herd, using our science to lead the rest of the cows to a slightly cleaner, more comfortable pasture. But we are entirely ignorant of the fact that we are still just a herd of cows heading to the slaughterhouse.
That is another incredibly vivid, jarring image he uses.
So what does this all mean? Let's trace our steps. We've examined the disease, our exhausting obsession with a zero-sum material world. We've unpacked the limitations of our 3% senses and the arrogance of applying physical science to non-physical realms. Let's arrive at the destination. According to Shuifeng's cosmology, what actually is the ultimate goal of life?
Right.
If the material world is the wrong marathon, what does the right finish line look like?
The true finish line is a process of radical directional spiritual evolution. Shuifeng states the ultimate goal is to elevate one's spirituality and entirely transcend worldly physical desires.
Okay.
Specifically, your objective is to evolve the non-material structure of your life, that essence we talked about that travels at negative universe speeds, and migrate it toward higher non-physical realms.
The text gives these realms very specific names, doesn't it? It isn't just a generic heaven.
Right. He charts out a specific progression. He names the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and ultimately the Elysium world.
Let's bring some texture to that.
Mm-hmm.
What do those worlds actually look or function like according to the text? How are they fundamentally different from Earth?
They represent progressive stages of discarding material friction. The thousand-year world is presented as a realm of extended harmony and vastly expanded perception, free from the brutal survival mechanics of Earth.
But it's still just a stepping stone.
Exactly. The progression continues to the 10,000-year world, moving further away from physical form until reaching the Elysium world.
And what's the goal there?
The ultimate endgame is to achieve the quality of a celestial being residing in these spaces, an existence defined by absolute freedom from material constraints, operating entirely within that invisible code of the universe.
Which brings us to the final practical hurdle.
Let's hear it.
If I am listening to this on my commute, trapped in traffic in my physical car, using my biological brain, how do I actually initiate that migration? If I can't think my way there with human logic, what is the mechanism?
This is where we return to the ultimate twist of reverse thinking. Sifeng notes that great wisdom often appears foolish to the earthly mind, and that supreme wisdom is entirely formless.
Formless.
Right. You cannot build a physical machine to get to the Elysian world. You cannot calculate a mathematical equation to achieve the status of a celestial being. He says the mechanism requires our minds to become one with Buddha.
Let's apply our ELI5 rigor to that. Becoming one with Buddha can sound like a generic spiritual platitude. What does it functionally mean in this context?
In the context of his essay, it means dropping the static of the individual material ego to align your internal frequency with the universal code. And the specific tool for this alignment is visualization.
Visualization.
Yes. The text explicitly states, by visualization, our wish will come true, and it adds a critical, clarifying note, it is not by thinking.
How is visualization fundamentally different from thinking? Aren't they both just things happening in my head?
Thinking is linear, logical, and bound by physical causality. A causes B. It is an analytical process rooted in the physical brain.
Okay, and visualization.
Visualization, in Shufeng framework, is nonlinear. It is the language of the non-material structure. By visualizing the ultimate goal, by intensely holding the experiential state of those higher realms in your awareness, without trying to logically deduce the steps to get there, you bypass the noisy, limiting filter of the 3% physical brain.
So if earthly logic is the physical tool, visualization is the spiritual tool. By visualizing instead of calculating, you are essentially tuning your internal radio away from the heavy static of the material universe and locking directly onto the frequency of the 97%.
That is exactly the mechanism. It is an experiential alignment, not an intellectual achievement.
Which brings us to a really fascinating, provocative place to leave this deep dive. You've heard of Shuifeng's diagnosis of the marathon we are all running. You've heard his insistence that you cannot measure the non-material world with material tools.
Right.
You cannot use the eyes, the ears, or the logic of the 3% universe to grasp the unseen reality. So we want to leave you with a direct challenge based on the source material, something to mull over during your commute or the next time you find yourself stressed over a material deadline.
A practical, personal application of reverse thinking.
If you were to sit quietly right now and you made a conscious effort to observe the world, without using your 5 physical senses shutting off sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, and you simultaneously refuse to engage your logical analytical thoughts. Without engaging your logic, what exactly is left inside you to do the observing?
When the noisy static of the material world and the calculating engine of the logical mind are entirely powered down, what is the nature of the you that remains in the silence?
Think about that today. Try to locate that silent observer.
Yeah.
Because according to Shuifeng, that invisible, formless awareness might just be the only compass you have capable of pointing you in the right direction.